I'm Sue Cooper. I'm an artist and art tutor based in West Sussex, and today I'm going to show you how to paint a dog in pastels. Now, I always feel a bit weird saying paint a dog in pastels or pastel painting, because it feels like if you're not using a paintbrush, it's not painting. Although I did use a paintbrush, to be fair, in this one. The difference between pastel drawing and a pastel painting, I learnt, is a pastel painting is more done in layers, and it's a bit more like covering the paper completely, or the subject matter completely with pastels. Whereas if it's pastel drawing, it really focuses more on the line. So in this tutorial, which you'll be able to find the full one on Patreon, which is free for my Patreon members, my Art Challenger and one-to-one coaching members, and £10 for everybody else. I talk about the materials that I'm using, and I am using here a variety of different pastels. I've got some Koh-i-Noor soft pastel pencils, and I've got some Brushfear coloured charcoal pencils, which are a little bit harder. I've got some inscribed soft pastel blocks. They're great. They're reasonably good quality pastel. And then my favourite are the Sennelier soft pastels, which are a lot softer. You can find the materials that I used in my on my website, so I'll put the link down in the description. So the idea with pastel painting for me is that you're doing it in layers and you're working forward. So you're putting the very background layer on first, maybe the big main colours, just really trying to fill things in. So have a go with all your different pastels and see what kind of effects you can get. Pastel blocks are quite good on their side because they can give you quite an even effect, and then you can blend it out using a paintbrush. You can use paper towel and just go in circles. You can use you can use those smudgy sticks, if you know what I mean. They're called tortillons or something. Tortillons, I think that's it. Anyway, they're like little pencils made of paper, which you can use to get fine, and that's one of them there, which you can smudge to get fine little lines. So once you've got the main colours blocked in, you can start looking at details. But no, I'm still not really focusing on individual hairs or anything like that. And you can be as crazy as you want really with your colours here. What matters are the values and the contrast and the lights and the darks that you can get. So really kind of focus on that. Don't think about individual little bits at the moment. Now, what's great with pastels is if you make a mistake, you can just rub it out. So if you've got one of those kneadable rubbers, which are absolutely fabulous, they do really, really, really thin little hairs, or you can roll them into a larger bit and sort of dab it to get larger areas off your paper. So I think they're pretty much essential. The other thing I tend to use is the Tombow Mono Eraser, which is almost like the size of pencil lead in a rubber format. So that's quite good for doing smaller little areas as well, if you're wanting to erase them. So we could have done this dog in any colour that we would like, as long as we're matching the values. And I tend to use my phone, so you can see that I've got my phone there. And I did debate whether you can do something when you're editing these videos, like a picture, I don't know what it's called, but you can put an extra photo up. But what I found quite useful when I do any copies is that you can zoom into different bits and you can lighten and darken things and change the exposure. So if an area of the drawing or the original photo is quite dark, just pop it into something like Photoshop Express on your phone, which is free, and you'll be able to lighten the exposure and see into all of those darks. So I find it really useful working from the phone. You can zoom in a way that you cannot on paper. So I'm still just shading in, just building up different layers. To be honest, I don't even know whether there's a limit to how many layers you can do. If you do get to the point where you feel like you're not making a difference, like the paper isn't holding anymore, then you might want to think about fixing it. And you can use a fixative for pastels and charcoal, or you can use hairspray, which is less archival but works a treat as well. Both the fixative and the soft and the hairspray have a tendency to darken the lights. So once you do that, you might just need to go over again with some lights. And I don't, again, think there's a limit really to how many times you do that. So don't feel like it's something that you need to wait until the very end. You can do it all the way through. So I did it after I wanted to stop smudging. Once I'd done all of the large chunky bits and the base in, I fixed it, waited it for a little bit, and then started adding more details. So with hair, you want to not think about individual hairs and instead think about clumps of hair. So if you can see, like in the middle of her ear, there is a sort of a clump of hair, and I'm trying to see that as an object in its own right rather than individual parts again. So do think about that when you're doing your hairs. And it works quite well so I did a darker kind of base layer, and then I used an eraser to just rub out some of the hairs, like clumps of hairs, and then you can darken up in between those clumps of hair to make it look a little bit more 3D. That works quite well. So as well as rubbing out some of the hairs, you can also use a lighter pastel, and pastels, you can go over the top of a dark pastel. So say you've got a layer of black down and then you want to add some lighter highlights, you can do that over the black, but sometimes it doesn't go on quite as nicely as if there hadn't been the black behind. And in those instances, when I want something a little bit fresher and lighter, then I will erase below that, underneath it, and then add the white or the lighter pastel over the top, and it will go on a little bit better. This is Shelby. She won a dog competition for a free pastel portrait, and it was really fun painting her and trying to capture her hair as well, because she's got a bit of a Mohican going on. It's very cute, very fluffy Mohican. So dogs tend to have always like a little bit of a highlight under their nostrils. What I'm using there is a makeup wipe, so makeup, an eyeshadow applicator, and that's really nice actually for using. Sort of smudges things nicely. You can also use a cotton bud, that works just as well. The makeup applicator seems like it pushes the paint around a little bit more, the pastel around, so you can get softer shapes. And you can see my hands look totally filthy there, and there is always a risk of, when you're doing pastels, the paper, it always tends to get a little bit dirty. So before you fix your picture, assuming that you're not going to put a background in like this, I would rub out all of the extra bits of charcoal so that you can, like what I'm doing now. So amend that a little bit, and then you're in a better position to hairspray it, because then, or fix it, once you've fixed it, it's almost impossible to pick up those little bits. So I haven't done much around her hair, because it's really, it's a bit crazy hair. And actually what I've got there is an electric eraser that works fabulously for cutting in. It sort of twirls around, and it's very powerful eraser. Sounds like a dentist drill, but it cuts into pastels really easily. And then combined with the Tombow eraser, the mono eraser, which is really thin, you can get quite good sort of hair effects. So you can see I'm just pulling out some of the highlights with my eraser. And here I am just doing a little bit more detail around the eye. So it's important to get lifelike eyes, really try and focus on them. Make sure that the darks are as dark as they need to be, that the lights are in the right place. If you want to get nice crisp highlights, then I would recommend just rubbing them out underneath a little bit and then adding some white. So what I did there, I did the Tombow eraser just to rub out a little bit. And the darker you can kind of get the eyes, often the more expressive they look. Here I'm just doing a few extra little details with the hair, always making sure that I'm going in the same direction as the hairs and changing it up a bit. The Brush Fear pencils work really well for that. They're the coloured charcoal and they're a bit harder and they stay put. Whereas the Koh-i-Noor soft pastels I like equally, but there's a lot of powder involved as well with them. So the difference between an amateur looking pastel portrait or any portrait really, I think, is the lights and darks. And if you can get the lights and darks right, you can get a pretty accurate looking dog. And if you, or pet of any type, if you want to see how you're getting on in terms of the lights and darks, then the best trick I know for doing that is to have the photo printed out or put onto your in a collage in Photoshop Express or something like that, and putting it next to your painting and just turning them both into black and white so that you can see whether the blacks in the photo are where the blacks in your painting are, and then you can amend it accordingly. So I go into this in a lot more detail on my Patreon video. This dog picture actually took me 2.5 hours. I have condensed it into 1 hour where I go into a lot of detail about what I'm thinking about and how I'm managing it in the first half an hour, and then the rest is a bit speeded up. So if you have a go, I would love to see it. You can join Sue Cooper's Art Club on Facebook and post your work there. I'd love to see it and comment on it. Or you can join my Patreon. It's £10 to be an Art Challenger member or £25 to be a one-to-one coaching member. And you'll get some Zoom calls with that and access to cheaper tutorials. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.